Our subject of the second panel is credit and access to credit for people on low incomes or who experience financial exclusion. And one thing that we know from research that's been done many times is that there is a high demand for credit from people on low incomes. It's entrenched in the reality of life on a low income. Often it's the only way of managing cash flow and funding major purchases, basic purchases sometimes. And we know from recent research that 69% of all low-income households in the UK are credit users. And why are they credit users? Because they're driven by a lack of savings and safety nets and competing pressures on the household budget. Linked to the number of people who are credit users is the high percentage too of people on low-income households that have no savings. 68% of low-income households in the UK have no savings, and that rises to 78% of those in the bottom 20% of those on low incomes. 70% of people on low-income households would find it, according to recent research, would find it difficult or impossible to raise £200 to £300 in an emergency. Something that everybody here would just put on a credit card, probably. Would find it incredibly difficult, and that's why people borrow. And what we're going to talk about this morning is some of the, obviously, the benefits of credit. We're interested in credit because it brings benefits to people on low incomes in smoothing out the household budget. But it also brings some severe risks and can put increasing stress on the household budget. Obviously, it reduces disposable income. People have got less to spend on other things if they're meeting repayments. And it increases, generally, the risk of financial distress, over-indebtedness, and financial breakdown, as people in the debt advice agencies know only too well. And of course, it becomes a risk when credit becomes unaffordable. And that's our first kind of topic this morning, affordability. What do we mean by affordability? And affordability, of course, is a complex question. I'll keep short. I won't try and answer it myself. I'll leave that to the people here. It's complex. It also can be manipulated because we know that people are often not interested in the cost of credit over time, but whether they can afford it this week. So £5 a week, but for how many weeks? Forever, sometimes. So affordability is a complex question that our participants here are going to enlighten us about. Of course, when we look at the low-income market and affordability, we generally have the subprime lenders, who are often seen as quite expensive, who are expensive, extortionate sometimes. We have credit card companies and banks, and often access to credit is through access to credit through banks and credit card companies, even for those on low incomes. And we have access to credit through social lenders, and in Britain, they're mainly credit unions and community development finance institutions. All of those three areas, subprime market, the banks, the credit card companies and social lenders, will feature in our interventions this morning. So let's turn first to our first question, and each participant will make two brief interventions. The first is on affordability. What do we mean by affordable credit when it comes to people on lower and stretched incomes? And also, what's the role of government? What's the role of creditors, lenders, in assessing affordability?